Then they put reactive armor all over there, so the drone comes in and touches the tank, and off it goes. Well, what happens when you're in the tank? You go, I gotta pee. So you open up the hatch, you climb out of the tank, you go off in the woods, and you're doing your thing. And then comes this stupid little Ukrainian drone that's comes down, finds the opening, goes in, and goes down the hatch and blows the damn tank up. Drones are dangerous things, guys, and in the hands of capable drone operators, they can do the job. I mean, the Russians have said the greatest threat they have right now is Ukrainian drones. When the Ukrainians apply their drone operators, who are very good, to a part of the battlefield, the Russians are just basically saying, when it's a drone versus a man or a drone versus a team of men, the drone always wins, unless the team of guys has some way to shoot down. The Russians are experimenting with shotguns, with nets. Some guys get lucky and use a machine gun or a AK, but, firing. Ryan knows this. You're getting that tiny little bullet out there to try and hit a drone in flight. Good luck. So when the Ukrainians flood the zone with drones, they kill a lot of Russians. They blow up a lot of things. They kill a lot of things. Now, the bad news for the Ukrainians is the Russians aren't just flooding the zone; they're flooding the whole battlefield. The Ukrainians have said that from the moment they enter, there's no maneuverability. There's nothing. They have to go straight underground. And one of the experienced guys going, "We're going to spend the entire war underground because the second we lift up, there's a drone hovering over looking for us. Once they see where we come from, they come in and you're screwed because, like I said, the drone stops. It's not a bullet. Stops, hovers, maneuvers down there, goes in and blows up. So drone warfare. Next.
Pick your city. Pick your city. Tell me.
Kevo Phelan is one of our regulars in Ireland, and I saw what you said, Kevin, that our sound levels are okay. Thanks for that. He left us a voicemail, or left you a voicemail message, and a little bit loquacious, which I think may be a characteristic of the Irish. Not reaching the levels of Mark in Ireland, however, but let's give a listen to his voicemail message.
Hi, Scott. Jeff, how you doing? Kevin Phelan here again from Ireland. Very disappointed to learn of your travel disruptions this week. Sign of the times, I suppose. Just got two short questions. They're again on Israel and Palestine. First, Scott, what's your estimate on IDF casualties? The Battle of Jabalia last week, that ended last week, Israel only admitted to 10 casualties in 3 weeks of fighting. As Barbarol's bigger than that, I'm sure you'll agree. Second, I believe Israelis as a population are suffering, I suppose, intergenerational post-traumatic stress disorder, for want of a better word. Do you see any hope that they will come out of this fog and see that their only hope for the peace they need to heal from those centuries of oppression and the PTSD that's come after it is to form a Northern Ireland-style state where Jews have 50% in the Knesset, Palestinians have 50%, and they kind of commit to building a new Jerusalem, so to speak. Anyway, hope your next travels go smoothly. Cheers, guys.
Thanks. On Israeli casualties, I don't know. There's logic dictates that they're taking more casualties than they're admitting to, and that there may be a reason, especially with Hezbollah in the north, because of the desire to avoid escalation, because the political pressure that would be put on the Israeli government to engage decisively with Hezbollah would be a lot greater if people understood how much damage Hezbollah is doing to Israel there. So there's good reason to believe that the casualties in the north are being, undercounted. In Gaza, I don't know, to be honest on that. I think one of the problems with Gaza is that we look at these videos that come out because we're all prisoners of the same data set. I mean, Hamas releases videos. Well, Hamas only releases the videos that look good. Trust me, They're professional information warfare people. Hamas isn't going to have the video of the guy coming out going, "Ah, Akbar," fires his RPG and it glances off and misses. They're not going to show you that one. I can tell you in combat, that happens more often than a direct hit. All right? That's the way it is. Shit doesn't work all the time, especially in combat. Hardly ever works. People are operating under the premise that every time Hamas pulls the trigger, they're hitting a tank. That's not the case. Most of those tanks have reactive armor. So even though you're using a tandem warhead, they slapped it. That was Hezbollah. They used a new weapon, sent a signal to the Israelis that when the time comes for the full-scale war, you won't have an Iron Dome. I think the Israelis notice what they're not talking about right now, invading Hezbollah. Why? Because they don't have an Iron Dome. And they're like, damn it, if we go in there and Hezbollah, we can't do it. But back to Hamas. They have a tandem warhead. So the initial reactive armor busts it up. Secondary explosion comes in, bursts through, hits the armor. And you might get some spalling or you might get some sort of concussion in there. But just because the tank goes boom on the outside doesn't mean the tank's going boom on the inside. And so a lot of these hits that we're seeing that look pretty cool aren't generating killed in action or, to use the term of the Russians, irretrievable losses. You are getting guys with headaches, and you are getting some wounded guys. The big number that they're not talking about is the number of wounded. Everybody's looking at the dead saying that's the thing. Hey, look, from Hamas's standpoint, whether you kill an Israeli or you compel the Israeli to be medevaced with wounds that are going to keep him from the battlefield, it's the same thing. Hamas has taken thousands of Israeli soldiers off the battlefield, not necessarily in body bags, but off the battlefield. I mean, there's some estimates have the numbers up around 12,000. I don't know what the truth is, but I do know that the real numbers would demoralize the hell out of the Israeli citizens. So I do believe that the Israelis are not telling the whole truth about their casualties because they'd be revealing things that they don't want to reveal to the enemy, to let the enemy know how effective their attacks are, and also to the Israeli public. Now, as regards your two-state solution idea, man, why don't you put together, and I'm saying this in all sincerity, because a lot of people are critical of, Northern Ireland today and what's going on there. But you compare that with, the late 1960s, early 1970s, and it's so much better. It's not perfect, but they're moving in that direction. Maybe the Irish should be the ones who take a lead in negotiating this two-state solution. Maybe the Irish get America the hell out of the way. We're not impartial negotiators. We have sold our soul to Israel, and the Palestinians can never trust us again. Maybe the Irish could come in and say, we'd like to teach you about the Northern Ireland solution. How you take an extraordinarily difficult situation. How do you get, orange and green to live side by side? Well, they've succeeded in Northern Ireland. Is it perfect? Nope. But you're not going to get a perfect, textbook solution out of what's going on with Israel and the Palestinians either. So maybe it's time for the Irish to throw their hat in the ring and say, hey, we'd like to take a swing at this. Maybe talk to the Chinese and talk to the Russians and see if there's a way to get Ireland in there as a neutral voice.
All right, I mentioned earlier that tomorrow, June 8th, is USS Liberty Remembrance Day, and that refers to the Israelis attacking an American ship back in 1967. And we teamed up with Ahmed and his team at Propaganda & Co. to release a video yesterday that borrowed rather liberally from a previous documentary made by Al Jazeera. And you can see it at scottritter.com. You can also see the panel discussion we mentioned earlier that Scott participated in this morning. And we are honored to have back with us Phil Turney, who's the president of the USS Liberty Veterans Association. But before we talk to Phil, let's take a look at a little bit of that documentary. And why don't you guys get into a little bit about...
No, you can't speak for me. as an analyst, I can only go where the facts take me. And when I reviewed all the declassified facts, I went with there. But if you listen to me at the end, I never once discounted the things that Phil and the others were saying. I never once said that they were wrong. We didn't reach different conclusions. I simply, as an analyst, I can only attest to that which the facts give me. What I have said is that the U.S. government has not done the full-scale investigation that must be done for the truth to come out. And until that happens, there's a whole wide range of options that could end up being reality. And so, I don't want you to put Phil and I, in a boxing ring where we don't belong. We're actually on the same side here. I can't, as an analyst, go all the way forward. Look, Phil's not an analyst. There's the difference. Phil was there. Phil has firsthand experience. I'm a guy who wasn't there. I'm a prisoner to the data sets that I can evaluate. And I went as far as I could with the data that I had available. But I recognize at the end that there's a whole range of possibilities that exist that can't be either endorsed or negated until there's a full investigation. And the U.S. government isn't allowing a full investigation. And I think on that, Phil and I agree. The U.S. government has not done the crew of the USS Liberty, they've done them a huge disservice. They haven't honored the sacrifice by doing the full-scale investigation that needs to be done. Because as I said, I'm just an analyst. You're living this tragedy. Look, I've been screwed around, excuse my language, screwed around by the U.S. government, 6 ways from Sunday, as Chuck Schumer has famously said, and all that. But, I wasn't on a ship where 34 of my shipmates were murdered by the Israelis. I wasn't on a ship where 172 of my shipmates were wounded, grievously wounded, watching, their lives bleed out from them. I wasn't on a ship that was attacked by a nation we thought was an ally. That is getting screwed. That's getting the short end of the stick. And, what you guys have been living with this for 57 years. 57 years. Sometimes I feel like I wake up in the morning, I feel like I'm going insane about what happened to me 20 years ago or 30 years ago. To carry a burden like the one you're carrying, like you and your surviving crew members are carrying for 57 years, the fact that you're still here amongst us, that you're sane, that you're rational, that you have your health, is a testament to the resilience of you and your shipmates. And what would we expect? You guys are the goddamn crew of the USS Liberty. You didn't go down. You didn't sink. You didn't falter. You stood proud. You didn't abandon your ship. You didn't abandon your shipmates. You didn't abandon your cause. You didn't abandon your nation. Your nation may have abandoned you, but you never abandoned America. So why am I surprised that you're still here, Phil? I shouldn't be surprised. I'm just saying that it's a hell of a thing, and people don't. For people who haven't borne the burdens that you've borne, and I to a lesser degree have borne, they don't understand the toll it takes to live a life knowing that your government has lied about the service that you provided, lied about the sacrifice you made, and is blocking at every step of the way any effort you make to tell the. Phil, I just want to say something. I don't want to get. You're like me, Phil. You wear your heart on the sleeve, and the last thing I want to do is get you riled up. But maybe we need to get riled up. But our Congress has abandoned the Liberty survivors, abandoned the Liberty dead, abandoned the Liberty wounded. As Phil, then you stop calling yourself an analyst. Stop calling yourself a journalist. Just call yourself what you are, a stenographer for whoever you think's paying.
Or propagandist.
Yeah, propagandist. But, so this was a big deal, what was happening in St. Petersburg. It's a bigger deal what's getting ready to happen in BRICS. This BRICS summit in Kazan is going to go down in history as one of the earth-shattering moments. Things are going to happen there, the continued expansion of it, but expansion in a way that the West doesn't even know. Serbia was invited. Now, whether Serbia ends up going, I don't know. But after what happened at the UN, where they, I don't want to get too political here, but they made the Srebrenica thing an annual genocide event, and the Serbs are like, we weren't the only ones killing people, and yet suddenly we're getting singled out. What about the Croats? They didn't commit genocide. The Bosnians never committed genocide. Everybody committed genocide, or just stop using the word genocide when it comes to that horrible conflict. But the Serbs are done, and the Chinese went in there and signed a wonderful little agreement that said they have a strategic relationship. Wait a minute, why doesn't Serbia have a strategic relationship with the European Union? Because the European Union doesn't want them. Serbia's been trying to be a member of the European Union since 2009. 2012, they were invited in. They had a plan, and the European Union is just using them. They don't want them. It's just a mechanism of control to get the Serbs to do what they want to do, so that Kosovo becomes a thing, so that weakens the Russian position in Europe. Serbia's taken a hike, but you know who else has just said, screw the EU? Turkey. Turkey's been trying to member the EU a long time, too. The EU just doesn't want to deal with Turkey. So Erdogan finally woke up and said, I think I'm doing the BRICS thing. Bahrain. They said, we're there too. Why is Bahrain a big deal? How about the Fifth Fleet has its headquarters in Bahrain? So the headquarters of America's Fifth Fleet in the Persian Gulf is in Bahrain, and Bahrain just said, we think that the Russians and the Chinese are going to do a better job of leading the world. What about the Indians? That's the one they always, it'll never happen. Scott, BRICS, there's that whole I thing in the middle. You got the BR, and you got the CS, and in the middle is the I, and that I is India. And India ain't playing that game, Scott. India's not playing that. India just signed a year-long contract with Russia for the supply of 3 million barrels of oil a month, paid in not dollars, not euros. What is that currency? Rubles. Oh, maybe India is playing the game. I look at that. Did you see that self-discipline there, Jeff? Did you see that?
It was rare. Hopefully there won't be too much of this self-restraint, because we like it when you let it rip.
你好.
That's the world's biggest economy. We could have gone and said hello to them, but
hello,
that's a lot. So thanks, Ryan, for flashing on the screen that you can see Scott's speech, or not speech, but discussion, participation in the forum at scottritter.com. Also, the video the USS Liberty video that we were discussing with Phil can be seen there in the video commentaries section. So,
what happened to Propaganda and Co.?
Well, Ahmed is traveling, and he warned me that he might be late. So I guess he's even later than he thought. So anyway, we can have him on another time. Actually, why don't we tell folks we have a new partnership with Propaganda and Co. And they were the ones mainly responsible for this video. And there is the address of the YouTube channel, unless they've been kicked off YouTube. Actually, I was going to bring it up. I forgot to mention. Well, I didn't forget. I guess I was going to wait for Ahmed to come on. But only about 30 seconds into the video, it streamed at 10 a.m. yesterday, and YouTube pulled it down, censored it after about 30 seconds.
Free speech.
Yeah. And I don't know, Ahmed is because he's the account holder, he would be in a better position to clarify whatever they might have told him, which probably was something less than a forthright explanation. But in any case, his channel is actually still going, but that particular video was pulled down.
I just saw a question, because, again, I'm not supposed to read the comments in chat, but I do. It said, where can you get a good source about the St. Petersburg summit or Economic Forum? Actually, if you just type in St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, there's an official site, and you go in there. You have to navigate it, but navigation's half the discovery process, because you realize how expansive and extensive this summit is. You go through the different panels, all the different subjects that they talk about. You click it, and it goes down. You have the different panel groups. Click each one, and you'll see who's in the panel. And you'll see what they're talking about, and you realize that, wait a minute, this is a couple PhDs worth of information that's being presented in this in the span of 4 days. Yeah, that's how big this thing is. And God, I wish I had been there because damn you, Larry Johnson. Damn you, Larry Johnson. Larry was there. Now he's going to be up forever. I mean, Larry's a great guy. I love Larry, but I know Larry enough to know that he's going to be like, hey, Scott, how you doing? I tell you, man, St. Petersburg was pretty damn awesome. I'm sorry, Scott. Didn't mean to rub that in there and the salt in your wounds, because I'm joking. But I mean, Larry and everybody who went there just had one of the most unique experiences of their life. This thing was so huge and so well done and so professional, and so the amount of information that's there and the relevance to the world today. These guys who went there, Jackson Hinkle, Larry Johnson, Scott Bennett, Tara Reid's there. I mean, these are the Americans that I know of. I know Pepe Escobar was there, but but anybody who went, they literally took a giant step forward in terms of how well prepared they are to do their job as geopolitical analysts, military analysts, political analysts, economic analysts, to the people who didn't go there. That's right, Jeff. I'm back in the back of the line now. I mean, I was like, top. I'm top dog. I'm all in the back. I got to work my way back up front. But Larry will be up the front going, too late, man. I went to St. Petersburg. You didn't. But it was just, this was a great event. And go on, get that website. Here, what comes out of this will help your cause in the long run, too.
I mean, I agree with Scott.
We shall see. Yeah, Larry.
Well, not only the website, but RT is doing a very good job of covering the forum. They have a lot of videos of the different panel discussions that have taken place, and this would be primarily on their Rumble channel. I wanted to just follow up with you on something that we were discussing privately yesterday when we were talking about how we can get it up on the website. RT also has an Odyssey channel, and Odyssey can be accessed in Russia, but Rumble cannot. Does the English language RT, do many people in Russia watch that or not?
No, I mean, RT is Russia Сегодня. I'm sure I said that wrong, but
right.
That's they have a Russian language service. They have an Arabic language. The RT English, RT used to be RT America. I don't know what they call it now, but the English language service is meant for people outside of Russia. Might be a couple reasons for this. One, to shield Hezbollah as part of escalation management, meaning that the Houthis already have everybody pissed off at them and they don't care, and America's bombing them and they don't care, and the British are bombing them and they don't care, and they just don't care. And so the Houthis are like, screw it, we'll take it. And Hezbollah is saying, we're doing this careful escalation management thing, that we got to make sure we don't push the Israelis over the edge. So even though maybe Hezbollah is doing it, and I'm not confirming that's the case, I'm just running with the general narrative put out there, that Hezbollah will let the Houthi take credit so that it doesn't complicate the escalation management that's going on. So that's what I think would be going on if the scenario you put out there is indeed what's going on. The Iraqi militias, though, recently just attacked shipping in the Mediterranean too. So everybody's getting in the game. Simplistic take. What you call a nuclear bomb or an atomic bomb. All right. I'm not going to get into the, irresponsible rhetoric thing. He said, we don't want to use nuclear weapons. There's no reason for us to use nuclear weapons. So, we're going to be talking about this, that, and the other thing. However, as he said, there is a doctrine that requires them to use nuclear weapons if certain things happen. And if the United States starts authorizing Ukraine to fire ATACMS missiles against nuclear command and control facilities, then it's all over. So what Putin did is inject an element of, responsibility into a horribly irresponsible chain of events that's taking place. He is the control rod. Basically, what was happening is, the Ukrainian conflict was like a nuclear reactor that was it was going crazy. I mean, it was going to just spontaneously, it was going to become Chernobyl. And Putin said, nah, and he threw some control rods in there, and they're absorbing the neutrons and they're lowering the flux and everything's going to be cool. But that doesn't mean that the reactor still can't go critical and go boom. It can. If the control rods are pulled back out, and they can be at any minute, bad things happen. What Putin did is give me hope that the Russian end of the equation, because at the end of the day, thermonuclear war requires both sides to do things to make it happen, that the Russian end of the equation is going to have several more steps built into it. And so the speed in which the Russians go from zero to hero is going to be slowed down a little bit, because Vladimir Putin is the smartest man in the room. Literally. I mean, no one will ever do it, but the guy deserves, the Peace Prize, because if it weren't for Vladimir Putin, this thing would have already gone critical. I mean, Dmitry Medvedev, maybe his job is, I shouldn't pick on him, because I think his job sometimes is to be, the junkyard dog out there just growling and spitting, say this is what Russia could do, because he's out there saying, sure, we're going to nuke. And he's not a minor official. He's a former president, former prime minister, currently deputy to Putin on the National Security Council. So, when he speaks, it's not like he's, it's not like if I were out there trying to speak on behalf of the U.S. government. I can't. Medvedev can speak on behalf of the Russian government, because not only was he is, but his words are very worrying. And what Putin did is he adult in the room. Exactly. Putin came in and went, hey, thanks, Dmitry. But, all right, everybody sit down. Okay. Third graders over here, fourth graders over there, kindergartners in the back, take a nap. We're gonna calm this thing down. Bring the cookies out, get the Kool-Aid out there. Not too much sugar in the Kool-Aid. And everybody, playtime's over. Let's take a nap. He basically came in and it took chaos and is trying to organize it. He has shown the ability to absorb all of the provocations that the West throws at him and do it with grace and do it with dignity and do it with responsibility, so that we don't end up all, what was that? Somebody asked a question about a suicide club. Putin does not want to join the suicide club. Putin wants to live, and again, I love the way his speech was put forward today. There's so much. Again, Ray McGovern. Ray, that's to you, pal. Or I don't know what the symbol is. You're the sensei. You're the man, Ray. You're the intellectual guru. I want to talk like Dennis Hopper in Apocalypse Now. You don't know what he's thinking, man. He's like that's Ray. Ray just blows my mind. But Ray's always, just said, just listen to the Russians, Scott. Because I'm sitting there trying to read tea leaves. Ray, last night it rained and there were 3 raindrops came down, and then the Russians blinked 4 times. And I think that means, and Ray's like, no, Scott, just listen to what they say. They're going to tell you what they're talking about. So, Ray will hopefully agree with me. When Putin structured his speech, the fact that he led off, not with what's going on in Ukraine, the potential of nuclear war, things like that, he led off with the economy. Why? Because Putin believes there's going to be a world here next year. Putin's not buying into the...
Well, also, it is an economic forum, right?
Well, it's more than that, though. I mean, it is an economic forum, but believe me, in the past, he's led off with non-economic observations. The fact that he chose to lead off with major economic revelations about BRICS, about structuring, about that, tells you that his priority is positioning Russia to succeed at BRICS and beyond. That his secondary priority is this war thing over here, which he'll manage effectively, but don't worry, guys, we're doing the whole economic thing. And again, what most Western analysts don't get it. They don't understand why it's important that he led that way, because that's his priority. It's like when he speaks to the Federal Assembly, he does his annual address, and you're listening, and he leads off and talks about domestic issues. And you're like, come on, damn it. What? Man, I want nuclear weapons. I want war. I want destruction. He's like, no, we're going to talk about, the regional economy. And suddenly you realize this dude ain't panicked by any of that crap. Because if he was panicked by that, if he was worried about it, that'd be the first thing he'd talk about. That would be the highest priority he's putting out to the Russian people. The Russian nation must stand forward strong against the horde coming in. He's sitting there going, all right, now we're going to tinker with the regions this way. The governors are going to do this. Timber production's up this way. We're going to do that and the other thing. And everybody in the West is like, oh, but you're missing the point. The point is Russia's focused on, in the West, it's all, how can we build more artillery shells? As if that's going to save the Western economy. It's not. What we'd like to have is a president start off saying, all right, we're going to try and bring back in steel industry. This is my plan for steel industry. And at the very end go, oh, yeah, by the way, I told Lloyd Austin, why don't we just crank up artillery shell production from this to that? But don't worry about that. But we lead off with artillery shell production as if that's the most important thing. And we're forgetting the basics, because you can't produce artillery shells without a solid steel industry. And we don't have a solid steel industry, so producing more artillery shells is a fantasy. Whereas Putin's saying, I'm going to get the domestic health of my country squared away. We're going to get domestic economy squared away. We're going to get domestic politics squared away. And then we're going to move on to these other important issues. People need to listen to Vladimir Putin more often.
All right, well, that'll do it for the loquacious version of Ask the Inspector. Join us on Tuesday for the lightning round at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's when Scott answers every question in 3 minutes or less. And at that time, we can give people details about the press conference on Wednesday, especially since I think it's going to be streamed live. So maybe we'll put that up at scottritter.com. What a show tonight. Very emotional. I think the most important thing that you said probably was that sometimes it's the scrawny guy who enjoys adult beverages who turns out to be the hero. And I think I know who you were talking about. Thank you,
Scott. Baby. It's you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's the big dude that walks around, that runs away and pisses his pants when the going gets tough. I mean, yeah, I get it.
I'll drink to that, and I will be scrawny to that as well. Speaking of the very opposite of scrawny, I'd like to thank Ryan Milton for his backstage work. Thanks to our beloved audience. See you on Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Take care, everybody.
Covering fire. Guy gets wounded. He bandages him up, puts everybody in, and drives off. That's what we're dealing with, guys. This is the general in charge of everything who said, screw it, I'm going to go rescue my men because they're wounded. There you go. So he's the kind of guy that says, I know how to win this thing. We can go here, we can go there, we can do this, we can develop, boom, boom, boom. And it takes casualties, and that's a reality of wartime. Vladimir Putin today said, we could end this war today. I mean, this is very easy to end, but we would take unnecessarily high casualties, and I don't want to do that. So we're going to slow it down. We're going to be patient. We're just going to let this thing ride out. We know what we want to achieve. We know that we're going to achieve it. We know how we want to achieve it. And we're just not going to we're not going to let a calendar drive us. So my new assessment, that's the bad thing about being an analyst, people. You make assessments and then new information comes in and you have to go, ooh, time to reassess. My new assessment is, let's just stop talking about calendars, because Putin's playing the long game right now. He said, for instance, he's talking about Zelensky, and there's a lot of speculation that, again, maybe I participated in some of this, not as heavy leaning forward as others, but when Zelensky, when his term ran out in May, everybody's like, well, he's been delegitimized. That means that the Russians are going to move in and replace him and all this kind of stuff. And Putin's like, we're not doing anything. He's there. We're not going to get rid of him. America's going to get rid of him. And it might take up to a year. Scott, I disagree. The whole world, Putin, Xi, Kim Jong-un, they all seem to be rational, except I don't know what you're disagreeing with.
I think he's disagreeing that Putin is the only sane one. He's saying some of the
I see what you're saying. Well, maybe the only sane one dealing with this issue of Ukrainian escalation, because Xi, even though he's Chinese and they seem to run the world, Kim Jong-un, he's a cool guy, but he's just hanging out in North Korea, and Khamenei is in Iran. I think I'm talking about Putin involved in terms of the NATO equation. You're right. The other ones seem to be rational. But Putin he's doing escalation management on a genius scale. Zelensky the implication is, we'll let America get rid of him, and then when they get rid of him, we can deal with whoever they did. But if they don't deal with whoever did, we're not going to do it. So the implication is this war is going to go on into next year. So there we are. I don't know. I mean, I'm tired of guessing on these, not guessing, but I'm tired of making an assessment based upon data, based upon certain assumptions. And then the assumptions change because new data comes in. But right now, the Russians don't seem to be in any. I think what happened is they moved in on Kharkov, and they did what they wanted to achieve. They forced Ukraine to suck in all of their available reserves up into the Kharkov front, which stopped the Russian advance because the Russians only came in with a certain number of troops. And then the Russians are turning it into another Bakhmut, Avdiivka meat grinder, where the Russians have gone in, they stop, they're digging in, and they're killing everything. The other interesting thing that came out with what Putin said during this week was that, I've been talking about, 10-to-1 casualty ratios and things, because Putin used that ratio a while back. But he was using that as the 10-to-1 was had parameters of time built into it. Now he did an overall strategic thing. He talked about, there's an interesting term they use, the not irreversible, but the irrecoverable or something casual. So it means you're either dead or your body's been so broken that you can't be returned to the battlefield. And he said that it's a 5-to-1 ratio, that for every 5 Ukrainians that are irretrievable losses, there's 1 Russian. And if you're saying 500,000 dead Ukrainians, that's 100,000 dead Russians, guys. It's a lot. It's a lot. This war is costing all sides a lot. The Russians aren't losing as much as Ukrainians, but remember, it took us 10 years to cycle through 58,000 Americans in Vietnam, and that broke the will of our nation. You guys think that the West is going to break Russia in two and a half years, 100,000 dead? And the Russians are like, screw it, man, 50,000 a month volunteering. The Russian people, they ain't backing down. This thing ain't going to end until Russia wins. So all the people out there that think that they can outlast the Russians, they can break them. Putin just gave a speech again, talked about the economy, let off with the economy. I keep reading. When Ryan puts it down there, I read it because my brain is slow. I can't dual process. But I lost it. So let's move on. My brain just went.
Let's take a phone call. Scott is a little tired. He's losing his focus, but you are going to bring it back with a great question. What's on your mind?
Okay, I'll tell Scott Spokojной Noci later. That means in Russian, peaceful rest, peaceful sleep. But Scott, my question to you is this. You've talked in the past about drone warfare and how it's changed the battlefield. And you're going to know this among anybody else. How small can a nuclear weapon be? Hiroshima and Nagasaki, I guess they were like 20 kiloton. Can they get reduced to the point of actually being able to be deployed on a drone? So you would have like some sort of nano nuclear war where it's devastating in specific areas. So that's my question. Again, Spokojной Noci, Scott. God bless you.
Don't say Spokojnej Noci too much because I might follow your orders. I'm programmed. Remember, I'm a Marine. I'm highly trained, muscle memory. Spokojnej Noci. I'm out. But, okay, nuclear weapons design. I don't think at this point in time we can speak of building a fissile munition that can fit on an FPV drone. I mean, no, because you need a certain mass. It's not just the enrichment level, but to get to what they call critical mass, that means you need enough of the fissile material so that the neutrons start to interact with each other in a way that generates the reaction you're looking for. If you don't have enough of it, you're not going to get that going. Now, you can boost it. And this is where it gets tricky because we're moving into nuclear weapons design. And even though I'm not a nuclear weapons design guy, I don't like talking about nuclear weapons design. And B, we're getting to a level of nuclear physicists that, Edward Teller could sit here and talk to, or Sakharov could do this. Scott Ritter is a simple Marine. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm some nuclear physicist who could say, well, if we get enough tritium put in there, you get the fusion boost, da, 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 da. But no matter what you do, boosting it, et cetera, I don't think you're going to, there's a limit to how small it can get. We could put a design in an artillery shell, 155 millimeter artillery shell, had a nuclear weapon in it. Maybe how many Russians were lost in Afghanistan? Around 10,000. Maybe the Baba Yag is this big old helicopter, this four-thing drone that the Ukrainians use. It's got this giant noisy engine on it, and they've been using it to great success, knocking stuff out. Maybe you could put something on the Baba Yag. I don't know. I would hesitate to put something on a drone, though, because drones, especially the ones that are dominating the battlefield right now, they can be taken over. I mean, it's an iffy proposition. You're going out there and you're playing a game. It's not like you're going to get to where you're going automatically. You're going out there playing a, cat and mouse game. As you're going in, they're coming at you. You got counter drones. You got guys with drone guns trying to bring you down. Electronic warfare jamming. Other drones diving in and knocking you out. I wouldn't put a nuclear weapon on those things, because the key thing about a nuclear weapon is it's a weapon that is intended to achieve a specific result at a specific place at a specific time. And you start throwing it out on drones, you could lose control of it. Your enemy gets it. So I don't think you're going to see an integration of nuclear weapons with drones. But drones are changing the battlefield. And in some ways, the impact they're having on the battlefield is more fundamental than Baba Yaga, than it would be if you put nuclear weapons on them. I watch it. This gets scary as hell. The Russians, their T-90 tank, and they built this drone cage over it because, you're thinking, okay, drone's going to come in, bounce off the cage. Bill just said. In Congress today, we have a congressman, I believe his last name is Massey. He served in the Israeli Defense Force, and he wears the Israeli uniform in the U.S. Congress. So we have an American representative who wears an Israeli uniform, the uniform of the nation that attacked the USS Liberty, that killed 34 Americans, wounded 172. He wears that uniform in the U.S. Congress without any penalty. And he advocates, and this is the part that really gets me, if your blood isn't boiling about a congressman wearing the uniform of the Israeli Defense Force while he's in Congress doing his job, then the next one should. He is advocating, because right now there's 20,000 American citizens fighting for the Israeli Defense Force today in Gaza and against Hezbollah. 20,000. And he is basically saying that the Congress needs to extend to these 20,000 Israeli Defense Force fighters who hold an American passport the same rights and privileges that are enjoyed by American reservists and National Guardsmen who get called up and have to leave their jobs, and their jobs are supposed to be protected for them. So Congress is willing to do the unthinkable, which is to extend rights and privileges that accrue solely to American service members and extend them to Americans serving the Israeli Defense Force. That should sicken you. But what should really sicken you is that Congress is bending over backwards to appease the Israeli lobby while they continue to stifle the search for the truth about the USS Liberty and the murder of 34 American sailors. If people don't start getting pissed off, this is the kind of stuff that should have all of America up in arms. My God, if you don't stand for American dead, you stand for nothing. These 34 died serving their country. They died in a secret war that not too many people know about. Even today, when I was digging through the archives, there's so much. You go into some of these reports and entire pages are removed. And I'm somebody who's a historian, and I understand the value of words. And when you remove entire pages from consideration by the public, that makes you say, there's that old Monty Python skit, the things that make you go, and that's one of them. Why don't you want us to know about that? Is it about classified? Well, I'll tell you another thing too. 1967, you guys may have been doing some top of the line stuff in 1967 in terms of technology, but it ain't top of the line today. And so what are we protecting? What are we protecting? When back then, they would take the UHF and VHF signals and they would bring them together. And one of the great things that the Liberty could do is to break those signals apart. Well, gosh, guys, hardly anybody uses those anymore. That's old school stuff. What are you protecting? What are you protecting? Are you protecting how we collected intelligence? Or are you protecting what intelligence we were collecting? Are you protecting the specifics of the intelligence that was collected? We don't know. That's the big thing. We're asked to draw conclusions based upon an incomplete record, a record that has been, what has been put before us has not been done by Phil. I would love Phil and the others, because you know what, Phil? I can guarantee you this too. I say this because we're cut from the same piece of cloth. You would never hurt America. You would never go out of your way to hurt America. So if I put in front of you the entire Liberty archive, and I said, Phil, declassify that which you need to tell the truth. But remember, we need to protect American national security interests too, that we don't want to put anything out there that, to give you an example, when Edward Snowden released all sorts of documents about the violations of the Fourth Amendment, I will never condemn Edward Snowden for doing that, because the moment we have U.S. intelligence services violating the Fourth Amendment rights of Americans, we got a big problem. But there was some stuff that was released through Snowden that should never have been released, because it didn't further the argument. All it did, though, is give away capabilities to, enemy. So I think, Phil, I trust you and your shipmates to go through this material and say, yeah, we don't need to say this. We don't need to say that. We don't need to say this, but we do need to say this. We do need to say that. If I were in the U.S. Congress today, and Dennis Kucinich, if you're listening, Dennis is our good friend who's running for the 7th District of Ohio. Dennis, my God, man, one of the first things you need to do when you become a U.S. Congressman is convene a USS Liberty hearing and get these survivors while they're with us before you to tell you the truth, so that you can begin the process of subpoenaing the intelligence community to release the material that needs to be done, and get Phil and the others to form one of these tiger teams to go through the documents and say, this is what we need to tell the truth. This we don't want. But they are, again, coming back to the question before, there's so much ignorance out there about Russia, about how Russia operates, what Russia's intentions are. How many people actually took the time to listen to Vladimir Putin's speech? I have been banging my head against a brick wall. In amongst very prestigious journalistic institutions. And I've been saying, St. Petersburg International Economic Forum is the premier forum of its type in the world. Everybody pays attention to Davos, Switzerland, because all the stars come flying in their in their jet. Leonardo DiCaprio can talk about global warming. Then he hops on his Gulfstream 5 and flies in and stays in a hotel that's artificially temperature controlled. And he eats in restaurants that put out more shit and more pollution than you could possibly shake a stick at. If people understood the actual thermal and pollution footprint that takes place in Davos because of the World Economic Forum, they'd realize the hypocrisy of the West. Davos had 2,400 attendees last year. St. Petersburg just knocked out 25,000 plus. All right. There's no comparing the two. St. Petersburg is they used to talk about the New York Times being, the newspaper of record, and basically that, if it appeared in the New York Times, basically it drove the story for every other newspaper in America. What happens in St. Petersburg drives what's going to happen in the entire world over the course of the next year. So how many people actually sat there and listened to Vladimir Putin? Again, these rock solid journalistic institutions that are supposed to be all about, unbiased search for the truth. when I tried to explain to somebody that the Russians called the operation in Ukraine a special military operation for a reason. There's a real honest to God reason it's called that, not a war or an invasion. The comment that came up is, I don't speak Putin. So fuck you, Ritter. I'm like, really? All you showed is how ignorant you are. I can't say anything. But the point is, learn to speak Putin, because if you don't speak Putin, then you won't understand Russian. You won't understand what Russia's doing. You won't understand what's happening in the world around you, which is why you're getting every story wrong about Russia. Everyone. They haven't gotten a single story right about Russia. Not a single one, because they don't even know how to spell it right properly. That's a gross overstatement on my part. They do spell it correctly. But they don't understand anything about it. And they just poo-poo it. They don't want to talk about St. Petersburg. Well, let's talk about BRICS. Can't talk about BRICS unless talk about St. Petersburg, because St. Petersburg is shaping the world that BRICS is going to, be dealing with come October. Vladimir Putin today made some important statements. But they weren't listening, were they? Like the dollar is going away. No, it's not, Scott. The dollar can't go away. It's a petrodollar. It's very important, you see. The petrodollar has been at the heart of the global economy for decades now. And the Russians simply don't have the sophistication of psychological thinking, and they have the inability to craft, the mechanisms necessary to deal with the complexities of global international finance. Yeah, they do. And they're dumping the dollar, and they're going with something that BRICS is going to lay out there. Because when Vladimir Putin says it, it's going to happen. That's the way it works, because he's not a typical Western politician who just says shit to make constituents happy. He actually thinks things through. So the world was put on notice that BRICS is going to be about a major change in the global financial system. Now, I don't know if most Americans understand what's going to happen when the petrodollar is no longer the preeminent, reserve currency in the world, but it's not going to be good. Have we planned for that? No, because we're not even thinking about it. Russia is the world's fourth largest economy. Now, that's amazing we said that. Russia is the world's fourth largest economy. You know who has the world's largest economy? They speak Chinese. And yet, there's a thing called the Group of Seven. Ooh, the Group of Seven. These are the 7 most influential economies in the entire frickin' world. These are the movers and shakers, baby. These are the guys that sort of came up with that World Economic Forum thing, Davos. They are the guys that make the world happen. Except it's a lie, because if it's the G7, we know too, number 1 and number 4 ain't there, are they? Nope. I mean, Russia was the G8. Was the 8 on the G. If you're going to do it, Russia's the 4 on the G. The United States is 2. And other nations like Germany dropping the hell off. Their economy is shrinking. They're finished. The French, the Italians. It's a joke. The G7's not the G7. The G7 is the B7, bottom 7. They suck. And yet everybody in this analytical world out there just bows. If the G7 says something, that's front page news. Don't even question it. Don't even question it. Just print it as it is, baby. The G7 said it. Vladimir Putin says something. Oh, bullshit. Don't print it. Well, if you do, heavily caveat it with what? Questions coming from where? The G7. And you wonder why the West is getting its ass kicked. Because they aren't focused on the right things. If you weren't singularly focused on what's going on in St. Petersburg last week, is a fission weapon. Again, so when you bring enough fissile material together and you compress it enough, it creates a chain reaction, and it can go critical and explode. Boom out. So that's your basic atomic bomb. Then you have the hydrogen bomb. The hydrogen bomb is a fusion weapon. So you use a fission device to initiate fusion, which is basically you're consuming the heat is so great, it's being fed by hydrogen, and it becomes this giant explosion that consumes the hydrogen, I guess you would say, the hydrogen bomb. It's much bigger and more powerful than that. And there's things you do with that thermonuclear is where you will boost a fusion device. So if you look at some designs that came out, I can talk about it because it was declassified, but if you look, most people think of a nuclear device as being spherical, that's your implosion device, or a gun where you have a chunk of fissile material and you take the heart of it out over here, and then you're going to fire it pop, in here, and the impact will create the critical mass, the fission that you want. So gun device, implosion device. Fission splits atoms, fusion fuses atoms. Jared, that's why there's people out there who are smarter than Marines. And Jared is a person who's smarter than the Marine. Thank you, Jared. I knew that. I'm tired and I couldn't get that clever, but thank you. That he's 100% correct. So it's not the splitting, it's the fusing, which I think if we get into the combustion of hydrogen implies that, but you did a better job than me. So thank you for that. They use atomic bombs as detonators. They use a fusion weapon uses a fission weapon as its detonator. But now we get to this peanut thing. And the peanut thing is basically, we'll get into neutron bomb in a second. The peanut thing is you start with a fission, but then there's other materials, tritium and some other things that are neutron generators. So what you're doing is you're boosting it. So you start the fission thing, then you get the boost. So you're going to expand the fission, and then you hit it again. And now it's like if I took gasoline and I just put a puddle of gasoline on the ground and I threw a match on it, the vapor that's created by the evaporating gasoline will catch on fire and you'll have a little flame there. But if I take gasoline and I spray it as an aerosol, and then I flick a match in there, boom, it's over. So you start it, the neutron, then you hit it again, and you get this gigantic explosion. And this would qualify as, I think, a thermonuclear device or a boosted fusion device. And that's as far as I can go. A neutron weapon, the whole idea of the neutron weapon is to minimize the contamination and maximize the radiation. And so you're basically taking a device that isn't going to have the same explosive force, but it is going to release energy. So the idea was we needed this back to get the Germans to agree to our nuclear plan in case the Soviets invaded, because we knew that if the Soviets came in with everything, our troops weren't going to be able to hold the front line. The Germans already said they're not going to let us hit Germany with the old school dirty weapons, because then farmers can't farm, people can't live. Scott explained 2, 3, 4 stage nuclear bombs, something like that. Thank you. Nuclear fun time. I'm not a nuclear weapons designer. But the neutron bomb, the idea was that you would fire this in, and you could fire it into a village. It would blow up, and it might destroy part of the village. But the idea was to put in this high intensity radiation that would eat through the armor and everything. So all the Russian troops going through there would get hit with the radiation, and then in a day, all get radiation sickness and die. And they'd all be dead, but the soil around them isn't contaminated long term. And when the war ends, the German farmers can come back and they can remove the dead Russians, and they can haul off the destroyed Russian tanks, and the German farmer can get back to farming again. So that's the idea of the neutron bomb.
Earlier, Scott, you said that you're going to alter your message somewhat. You know, you had previously said, in fact, you made a video a few days ago saying we're 1 millisecond away from the nuclear clock. But I heard a rumor that you were scheduled to speak in a press conference next Wednesday.